Yes, we are ready, sir. I welcome you all in MA 4th semester English online lecture series organized by Departments of English of Rajkumar Keval Ramani Kanya Mahavidyalaya Nagpur, Vasantrao Naik Institute of Humanities and Arts and Social Sciences, J.M. Patel College Bandara and Mahila Mahavidyalaya. I welcome you all. Today we have among us Dr. Kapil Singhel as the resource person. Sir is working as head Department of English at Vasantrao Naik Government Institute of Arts and Social Sciences, Nagpur. Sir has 27 years of teaching experience. 2 candidates have completed MPhil and 4 have been awarded PhD under his supervision. 3 books are edited by Dr. Kapil Singhel and 2 of the books are selected as textbook at undergraduate level. A number of research papers are published by Singhel sir. And now I request him to conduct the session. Over to you, sir. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank Mourn ma'am for introducing and welcoming me, and even my friend Dr. Karthik Panikar, whose presence here is really a big moral support to us. Even if he is not completely involved, he's always there to help us out whenever we need him. So he's there with us. So I thank both of them. Then the chief organizers of these online classes, that is the principals of the 4 institutes who are collaborating to conduct these classes. I am thankful to all 4 of them. And now, not taking much of the time, I'll start with my presentation. I'll be dealing with the second unit of paper 2, that is modern English poetry. And I'll start with the background studies, and we have 6 topics of background prescribed for this section. That is British imperialism, Welsh poetry, Depression decades, trench poetry, Max Ponde group, and Neoromanticism. Along with that, the texts for detailed study are of the poets Dylan Thomas and W.H. Auden. We have 4 poems each of each poet, and that I'll summarize the poem instead of going line by line. I'll just summarize the poem, and whatever the important points are, which will be helpful to the students from MCQ point, multiple choice question pattern point of view. And that is how I will try to proceed with my presentation. So coming to the first topic of background study, the first topic prescribed is British imperialism. Now the word imperialism has come from empire, the British Empire, and as we Indians, it is nothing new for us to know about the background of the British, as we were ruled by them for over 150 years. And now this administration and this rule of the British Empire, of which they were so proud that they would say that the sun never sets in the British Empire. That is somewhere in the British Empire, sun was there. It was day. So they were proud of it, and that rule was administered by a nation called United Kingdom. United Kingdom, that is England, the Great Britain. That is what is United Kingdom is. And at its peak, that is around at the beginning of the 20th century, in the first and second decade of the 20th century, when the empire was at its peak, they were ruling over 23% of the world's population and about 24% of the total earth area, total land area. And that is what was under their control. And now that is what is about the administration, which was controlled from a nation called United Kingdom, the United Kingdom, and they ruled over around 23% of the world's population, which existed on the 24% of the Earth's total land area. Then along with that, now when did they become the dominant power in the Indian subcontinent. It was after the Battle of Plassey, in which the East India Company had defeated the Mughal. The Mughal Bengal was defeated in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, and that marks the beginning of the British rule in India. So these are the certain points that you have to remember about British imperialism. And then the next topic is Welsh poetry. Now, Welsh is an adjective which has been taken from a country called Wales, Wales. Prince Charles, he's from Wales. So Wales is a country which is a part of United Kingdom. Then we talk about Great Britain, we talk about Finland, Ireland, Scotland, and England, but Wales is never considered there, but it is a part of that United Kingdom. And the poetry written by Wales people is known as Welsh poetry. The word Welsh is an adjective from Wales. So now this poetry of Wales is divided into 3 periods. Now, if we go back, it is as old as the poetry of English literature. The main source of English literature, the main stream of English literature. Similarly, this poetry goes, the first phase of Welsh poetry is from 550 to 1100. That is the first phase of this poetry. Then the second period of this poetry was from 1100 to 1350. And this period was known as Poets of the Princes. Poets of the Princes. Most of the poets of that time, they were princes. And that is why that phase is known as Poets of the Princes from 1100 to 1350. And then the final classical period of Welsh poetry was from 1350 to 1600, and from 1350 to 1600 the period is known as Poets of the Nobility. They were nobles, so poets of the nobility. This is how these two span of Welsh poetry are known as. You have to differentiate between them. The first period 550 to 1100, given no title. The second period from 1100 to 1350, Poets of the Princes. And the final classical period that was from 1350 to 1600, known as Poets of the Nobility. And then 1600 marks the beginning of modern Welsh poetry, the poetry that has influenced in one way or the other, but may not have influenced, but has almost become a part of English poetry. So since the year 1600, we have the beginning of modern Welsh poetry. So that is the second topic of your background study. The first was British imperialism, and the second is Welsh poetry. Now, moving on to the next topic. Now, the Great Depression. Now, don't get it confused with the Great Recession of 2008. Something that you might have studied, you might have come across in, I think, fourth unit, maybe the fourth unit here, the Great Recession. Here we have the Great Depression, which was a severe worldwide economic depression that had taken place during the 1930s, at the end of 1920s, in 1929. And it began in the United States, in America. It was there that it started. And the reason for the Great Depression, it was economic fall, were the profit-making system stopped working in the economy, and the industries were closed. The laborers, they did not get their salary. So everything was affected because of the depression, the Great Depression. And what was the reason for that? The reason for the Great Depression that took place in 1929 was a fall in stock prices that began around September 4, 1929. It was the first day that the shares went down in the United States of America, 4th September 1929. Now, what had happened? People were making a lot of money in share market, and every American started investing in the share market. It is said that even a carpenter who was working on the wages, even he would invest some 10% of the amount that he would earn, he would invest it in the share market. Initially, people made a lot of profit, but slowly what happened that investment became more than what was required, more than what was required. And because of more inflow of cash in the share market, the stock market fell. And it started from 4th September 1929, but it was on 29th October 1929 that the stock market crashed completely. It completely crashed on October 29, 1929, and that day was Tuesday. 29th October 1929 was Tuesday, and because of the fall in the stock prices, because of the collapse of the stock market, because of the crash of the stock market, that Tuesday is known as Black Tuesday. That is about the Great Depression. It is an economic phenomenon which took place in the United States way back in 1929. And you have to remember what was the reason for that. The reason was fall in stock prices, and the market completely crashed on October 29, 1929, and that day is known as Black Tuesday. Why? Because it was Tuesday and the markets crashed on that day. That is why it is a Black Tuesday. So that was the third topic. The fourth one is trench poetry. Now, trench poetry generally now it has become any poetry of war. But at the beginning, the word trench poetry was applied to the poets who had either participated, who were soldiers in the First World War, or even if they were not soldiers, they were professional poets, but they would write about their experiences of the First World War. So that poetry is known as trench poetry. It is a war poetry by a poet who participated in a war, or a non-combatant, anyone who hasn't participated in the war and writes poems about war. Now it has become a general term, and all war poetry is known as trench poetry. But earlier, particularly the poetry of the First World War was known as trench poetry. So the term is applied specially to those who served during the First World War. And we have a group of poets who are considered to be the war poets, and their poetry is known as trench poetry. These poets are Wilfred Owen, Robert Graves, Siegfried Sassoon, David Jones, Ivor Gurney, Rupert Brooke, Edward Thomas, and Isaac Rosenberg. This is the group of poets, of war poets, who have written trench poetry. Now you have to remember the names of these poets, because there can be a poet who is not from this group, and you will have to single out that poet from the options given, that who is not a war poet. Three will be from this group, but one will not be from the group. So this war poetry of the First World War and this group of poets is known as trench poetry. That is the fourth topic. Then the next topic is Max Ponde group. Now, again, this is a group of four poets who had inclination towards communism, and they were leftist. They were supporters of communism. Remember, to be a supporter of communism in the United States of America, even there, and as well as in the United Kingdom, because where in these two nations, democracy is very popular. So, but still, there are people with leftist ideas, and this group of four poets that included W.H. Auden, Louis MacNeice, Cecil Day Lewis, and Stephen Spender, and Christopher Isherwood. Okay, even Christopher Isherwood. So these poets were included in this group, Max Ponde. And this name, Max Ponde, is an abbreviation. You see, M.A.C. Mac has been taken from the poet MacNeice. Then S.P. has been taken from Spencer. Then A.U.N. from Auden. And Day has been taken from Cecil Day. So the initial part of their name has been taken, and this term was coined by a writer named Roy Campbell. It was Roy Campbell who had used this term in his book Talking Bronco. In his book Talking Bronco, where he had wrote about these poets. He had told that they have leftist ideas, but these poets never wrote as a group. They were known to each other. They had studied together. That all fine, but they never wrote as a group. But their ideas were almost similar, but they never came together. They never came together, and the only common room that they had shared, it is said that once they had shared, they were together in some program of BBC, which is along with Dylan Thomas, and that was the only day, and only that is the only room that they have shared. Otherwise, they never came together. And so the group of these mostly four poets. Christopher Isherwood is a minor poet, not that important, but the other four, they formed this Max Ponde group, and they were the poets with communist ideas, with the ideas of the leftists. And along with this term Max Ponde, they are also known as, this group is also known as Auden group, and along with it, they are also sometimes called the 30 poets. The 30s poet, that is the poets of 30s, that is the poets of 1930s, of the decade of 30. So the same group, three different name, how the name was coined, and who are the poets in the group. That is what you have to remember. They were the four were a group of like-minded poets, and although they shared little, they have nothing in common. They were known to each other, acquainted to each other, but still they never worked together. But they shared little. That means nothing, but only left-wing views. That was the only similarity between them. Views in the broadest sense of the word. Otherwise, there was nothing common about their writing. And of these, the Buried Day, the famous autobiography, has been written by Day-Lewis. That poet has written The Buried Day, which is an important autobiography. And as there were certain allegations against these poets that they form a group to spread the ideas of communism in the United Nations. But this autobiography of Day-Lewis, in this autobiography, he has not even mentioned about that BBC program in which the four poets along with Dylan Thomas had come together. So that event was not at all important for them. The meeting was not at all important for them. So though they have the similar ideas, they had their own views. They had their own points, and this is how this group, and though the poets, they never worked together, but because of the same similar themes, they are a part of Max Ponde group. So that is the fifth topic of background study. And the last term, the last topic of background study is Neoromanticism. Now, Neoromanticism, when it comes to the earlier part of Romanticism, after Alexander Pope, after the neoclassical age, when we have the transitional poetry coming in through the writers like Burns and Thomas Gray, Robert Burns, and William Blake, when they came on the scene, and the Romanticism was applied, the term was applied to the poems of, to the Romantic movement came into English literature. Now that movement was mostly related to literature. So that was Romantic movement. But as we move forward ahead in the Victorian period, being related to arts as well. So that is what we find in Neoromanticism. It not only covers literature, but it covers movements in philosophy. Of course, literature has to be there, music, painting, and architecture. As we have pre-Raphaelite movement. Raphael was a painter. Similarly, Neoromanticism. It covers everything along with literature. It covers philosophy, the subject of philosophy, music, the performing art, painting, architecture, and even social movements. Even social movements, they have become a part of Neo-Romanticism because society as a whole has been associated with literature. So all this has become a part. So Neo-Romanticism is a broader term than Romanticism, and this Neo-Romanticism includes all these things that I've listed earlier: philosophy, music, painting, architecture, along with literature that exist after and incorporate elements from the era of Romanticism. The elements are taken from the time of Romanticism, some aspects of Romanticism, and they incorporate elements from Romanticism into their work. So after Romantic movement, we had the Victorian poetry, the Victorian era, which was followed by modern age, and the war-torn world, the First World War, and so things really changed. Even literature changed, but there was a group of poets who would be writing or who were associated with other field of arts and Romanticism. They would take aspects from the Romantic movement, and these people, they are known as Neo-Romanticism. It has been applied to writers, painters, composers, musical composition who rejected, abandoned, or opposed realism, which is an important aspect of modern literature. That is what was rejected. They abandoned, left alone, opposed realism, naturalism, or avant-garde modernism. Avant-garde modernism. Modernism related to art. Modernism related to art. Avant-garde is related to art. Art se sambandhit. That is what is avant-garde. So the only thing you have to remember that Neo-Romanticism is a broader term, and it includes under it other fields of literature other fields of arts along with literature. That is what the Neo-Romanticism is. So that is all we have about the background study, the 6 topics. The points that you have to remember, that I have mentioned them, and around, I think, 8 to 10 questions should be there from the background study from 40, because 25% of the syllabus is allotted to it. With that, I'll move on to the poet who are there for detailed study now. The first is, and I'm coming directly to their poems instead of going into the details of into biographical details of the poet. So we have Dylan Thomas, and along with Dylan Thomas, I think W.H. Auden. Yeah. Now, do not go gentle into that good night. Do not go gentle. Don't be a gentleman, accepting everything, showing to be a very good person. No, struggle, come on, fight. And that is what he's suggesting. Do not go gentle. Don't be gentle. Be prepared for that war. Into that good night. Into that good night, you are wishing good night to this world. Good night is a parting salute, isn't it? It is when you are moving away from some person. Nowadays, we have started the new way of greeting good day. But earlier, when it was not there, good night was applicable even in the morning at 9 o'clock. If you are not supposed to see the person again through the day, you would have, you could wish him good night, but now the good day has come in. So now good night here is the last night on this earth. You are parting, that parting salute is to this world, where you might have lived for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, as your luck might be. So do not go gentle into that good night. So in that good night of death, in that good night of death, the day you will be dying, you will be parting this world, going away from this world, and you will be wishing good night to this world. On that day, it can be day, it can be night, when you wish, when you go away from this world, don't go gently, fight death till end. Ultimately death is going to win. Finally it is the death that is going to win. But you don't have to, but you have to fight death. That is what Dylan Thomas is suggesting in this, telling us in this poem. Now the poem is of 6 stanzas, and in the 6 different stanzas, the people with different personality, with different attitude, different kind of people, they have been told to us. And do not go gentle into that good night. And the first, it is about the old age. The old age should burn and rave at close of day. That is what should, now again for from MCQ point of view, what should the old age, how should the old age fight on that good night of death? It should burn, burn with strength, with energy, willing to face death, and rave at close of the day. It shouldn't take the things lying down. It should fight, rave, full of activity, action. I am not going away easily, and death will have to struggle to take me away. Ultimately, death is going to win. We are aware of the result. No argument about that. But still, we will not take the things lying down. We'll fight death. So that is their old age should, just a minute, excuse me. So it should burn, the old age should burn and rave at close of the day. Rage against the dying of the light. The light is slowly go away, and you have to fight against the going away of the light. That is for the old age. Then that is the first 3 lines, the first stanza of 3 lines. The old age should burn and rave at close of the day. Then the wise men, they have their words had fogged no lightning, and at their end no dark is right. They know that the ultimate aim of the life is death. The ultimate destination of the life is death. And this is what wise men know. And the day the egg is developed in the womb of our mother, the day we happen to be there in the womb of our mother, on that day itself, the death is sure, it's certainty. So this is what the wise men know, because their words, the words of wise men had fogged no lightning. They haven't made much difference. They had fogged no lightning. And even these wise men, they should not go gentle into that good night. And that is what even they should rage against the dying of the light. That is, even they should not go gentle into that good night of death. So how about the old age people? The first stanza. Second, wise men who were aware of this fact that one day they have to go. So the words will fail to impress them, because they know that this is the ultimate end of life. But still, they should fight death till the end, till last. Then after wise men, we have good men who were well behaved, helpful, that kind of people. The last wave, by crying how bright, their frail deeds might have danced in the green bay. Their frail deeds, now frail here is soft, their soft deeds of goodness, good men, and their frail deeds of goodness, They might have danced in the green bay when the life was at its peak, when they were young, they were not nearing death at that time. Their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, another green bay, when everything was green, youthhood was there, that period of time. They have performed these frail deeds, the deeds of helping others, giving good advice to other people. So that is what they have done. But again, they have to fight on that good night of death. They have to rage against the dying of the light. So old men, wise men, and good men. And old men, they should burn and rave at the close of day. Wise men's words had food, no lightning, and good man's frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, but still they will have to give all the fight to the death, and on the day they will be passing away from this world. Then wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight. Wild men, thoughtless action, not thinking what would be right, what would be wrong, not afraid of anything. Those kind of people who caught and sang the sun in the flight, that is, try to achieve something which is impossible. These people, the wild people, the thoughtless, reckless, careless people, and who tried to achieve something impossible, and they and learned too late. They grieved it on its way. They learned too late that whatever they were doing was beyond their reach. It was not in their reach. So they have wasted their life. They have wasted their time. They are sorry for it. They grieved it. And when they are on its way, they are also going away from this world. They learned too late, but they realize it too late, that whatever they were trying to achieve, that was not the possibility. So the wild men, they learn too late, and they grieve on it. They too, on their way, should not go gentle into that good night. So the fourth kind of people are the wild men. Wild men here means the people who act carelessly, recklessly, the people who act thoughtlessly, that kind of people. So that is the four kind of people, and they will learn it too late, and that this is not the way, this was not the way to live a life. They are grieved, they are sorry for it, and they are on their way now, but even they should not go gentle into that good night. Then the fifth kind of people are the grave men, serious, not like the wild men, just opposite to them. They are grave men, serious. They are very serious about. They were very serious about their action. Whatever they did, they gave it a good. They gave it a good thought before acting. They had gave it a good. Those kind of people, grave men, when they come near death, and when they come near death, who see with blinding sight, the slowly their sight, their sight is going away, blinding sight. They are nearing death. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Even their blind eyes could blaze, even they can shine, blaze, like meteors. Though the sight is losing its strength, it is losing its ability to see, but still the light of the grave thoughts that they had during their life, that could blaze like meteors, and be gay, be happy, and you have to rage against the dying of the light. So this is how the 5 different kind of people have been mentioned in this poem. First is the old people, old age. Second, wise man. Third, good man. Fourth, wild. Fifth, grave. And last, but the most important about the poem, that this poem is addressed to his father. Dylan Thomas has addressed this poem to his father. And in the last stanza, he comes there, and you, now those all are done with. I have advised all them. I have suggested it to different kind of people who are in this world. But this poem I have written for you, my father, and you, my father, there on the sad height. Now you have reached that height of age, that altitude of life, and that graph of life. On the sad height, curse, bless me, now with your fierce tears I pray. Curse me, scold me, bless me, now with your fierce tears I pray. So with your tears, and you too, do not go gentle into that good night. So you to fight the death. Now this is the last stanza, tells us that the poem is addressed to his father. To whom the poem is addressed is his father. It is about his father that Dylan Thomas is writing this poem for. His father is on deathbed, and he wants his father to fight death till end, not to give away easily. Though it is for sure that death is going to win, but like the other people, as he has advised, the people of different with different attitude, or people with different behavior in their life. But the main idea of this poem, that is addressing his father, that his father who is on the deathbed, he should fight death till the end. That is what we have in this poem. Do not go gentle into that good night. Now the next poem of Dylan Thomas is Refusal, to mourn the death by fire of a child in London. Too long a title, a long title of a poem. And this poem is written for a victim of the bombardment that took place on the city of London during the Second World War. During World War the Second, and the child is no more. A girl had died, a young girl. She died in that bombardment, and the poet refuses to mourn the death. He comes out with the reality, the facts of life, and dedicate. That is why the poem, I have written it into there in a bracket. Yeah, very important. You have to remember this, that the poem refusal to mourn the death by fire of a child in London. That poem is dedicated to a child who was a victim of bombardment in London during the Second World War, World War the Second. It is dedicated to that child. So in the first stanza, in the beginning of the poem, that is what you have to remember, that the poem is dedicated to a child who was a victim of bombardment that was carried out on the city of London during World War the Second. So at the beginning of the poem, the poet speaks about the darkness as a source of mankind. Where have we come from? Where has the mankind come from? Where has the bird, beast, flower, all these things? We have been fathered by humbling darkness. The world from where we have come, that world is filled with darkness, full of darkness. From that world we have come. So that is the beginning of life for everyone, for mankind, for human beings, for birds, for beasts, the wild animals, for the flowers, for the nature. One day they blossom, but one day they also go away. So we all come from the darkness. We all start from darkness, and we all go back to darkness. Bird, beast, and flower, and they all are fathered by humbling darkness. We all come out from darkness, fathered from the humbling darkness. And this darkness is the period before and after life. The darkness from where we have come, we go back there to that darkness. That is a period before and after life, and between that we are in a life. So the period before and after life, as having defined who humankind is and what one is able to experience and endure. Who are we? Who humankind is, this human race, what we are. We have come from darkness and ultimately we will go back to darkness. That is what we are. Who humankind is. The humankind has come from darkness, from the humbling darkness, fathered by the darkness, and we will be going back to the darkness. That is one thing. And what one is able to experience and endure. And in this life here, in the middle part, what we call life, here we have to experience certain things and tolerate certain things. And the same thing can be said for the non-human things as well. Whatever he is saying is not only about the human beings, but that is applicable to other things which are not human. For them, even this thing is applicable. That is what we have seen. And the first stanza, the speaker talks about the origins of life. He's talking about the origins of life for along with human being, for other as well as for the birds, for the beasts, for the flowers, for everyone is talking about the origin of life, that is from all humbling darkness. And at the end again we will go to the darkness, and the phase between that we called as life. And in this life we have to experience many things and we have to endure many things, and that is what we have in the first stanza of the poem. Now in the second stanza of the poem, after this life, we enter again, the round, and when we move towards end, we are again going back to nature. We are again going back to nature. Zion of the waterbed. Zion is a city in heaven. It is a city in heaven. Biblical, from Bible. It's from the heaven. And after death, people go to that city. This is what is believed. And this is what the belief is. But here, Zion of the waterbed, and that means we are going back to nature. From the dust thy come, to the dust thy go. Dust is a part of nature. We are going back to nature from where we had come. When it comes, when nature tells us that the end is here, we know that we have to go back to that place, and our soul will go and reach that place. And we will reach the synagogue of the ear of corn. Now, what is synagogue? Synagogue is a place of worship of Jews. Here it is sacred place. Here it is sacred place. SACRED. That kind of place he's talking about. That we all have to go back to that place one day, from where we have come. From all that humble darkness that has fathered us, that has made us. We will return to it. We will go back to it one day. And through the phrases and images of a city of Zion, of the waterbed, we will enter that city, which is the city of people who lived after death. They go and live there. Now, here Zion of waterbed is going back to nature. Going back to nature. From the dust thy come, to the dust thy go. That is what he's telling us. And that is the sacred place. That is the sacred place. And we will return to the center, origin, and base of all life. Now, this is the place from where all lives have originated. This is the center from all lives have started. And they are the base of all life. They are the foundation of all life. The life has started from there and it has to end there. He will enter his death, and in doing so, once more become a part of the earth. He will go and become a part of this world, of this nature. Now, earth here again means nature. The planet earth is a part of nature. So, we have come out from that humble darkness, as we have seen in the first stanza. Not only we, not only human beings, all the thing around us, the birds, the beasts, the flowers, they all have come from the nature. We all will die one day. We know it. We are prepared for that. And we know that we have to go back to the Zion, or to the city of Zion, where synagogue Gog is waiting for us. The sacred place is waiting for us. And we will return back to that place, which is the center, origin, and base of all life. We will enter death, and in doing so, by entering death, we will again unite with the nature. We will again unite with the earth. Now, earth here means nature. Remember this. That is what we have in the second stanza, the idea in the second stanza. Now, the third stanza. Now, here the poet comes to the main topic, to the title of the poem. And now here he talks about the death of a child on the streets of London. There has been a death in London, and the child has died in a fire. The majesty and burning of the child's death. The child has been burned down to death because of the bombardment of the second violence of the Second World War. And I shall not murder. The child is dead. But I shall not murder the child. That death doesn't end the journey of that child. In fact, the child is embarked on some another journey. That is what he wants to suggest. There has been a death in London, and a child has died. And I will not end here. That is not the end for child. I shall not murder. The mankind offer going with grave truth. The mankind going with a grave truth, grave serious, something that we have to accept. This is how things go in this life. This is what we have to experience. This is what we have to endure. And by considering it to be the end of the life, I am not going to murder the child. There is another journey when the child will visit that city in the heaven, Zion. That still remains. The child will go and be one with the nature. He will be one with the nature, and that is from where the child had come. It had come from the same place, and it is going back to the same place. That is what the philosophy is. So he does not want to send this child into death's arm without her grave truth, without the truth. He does not want to taint the reality of her situation with his own tears and emotions. So I shouldn't cry by writing an elegy on the innocence of that child, on the youthfulness of that child. It will be an act of blasphemy. Blasphemy down the stations. Now, what is blasphemy? Blasphemy is criticism of religion or criticism of God, is blasphemy. By crying over the death of this child, by expressing sorrow over the death of this child, what would I be doing? I would be doing an act of blasphemy, he says. I will be going against the wish of God, because we have come from nature and we have to go back to nature. So that is that's the fact, that's the reality. And whatever I would utter to console the death of this child, to mourn the death of this child, that all is meaningless, he says, because the fact remains fact. The fact is we all have come from the darkness, and the fact is we all are going back to the darkness. And that is the situation that I would like to deal with, instead of expressing my sorrow on the death of that child. And that is what we have in the third stanza of the poem. And then the last stanza, the fourth stanza. In the last stanza, as it is there in the explanation, something that I have already explained. Dylan Thomas was writing during the years of World War II, and he's speaking of all that was lost during the bombings of London. Now, there is a symbol of one girl being dead on the street of London. That is one symbolic. That can be symbolic, but he's talking in the larger context. Everything has died. Humanity has died. Innocence has died, isn't it? There is violence everywhere. And that is why he has sought to have a symbol of this child. But at the end of the poem, you see there is a mention of Thames, the river Thames that we have in the Westland as well. So uh, now when it comes to the end of the poem, he says the last line, that is what is important: after the first death, there is no other. And now what is the meaning of this line? After the first death, there is no other. You see, when the life had started from that humble darkness, when we were fathered from that darkness, when the life came, maybe in the form of flower, maybe in the form of beast, a bird, or human being, whatever form. And when the first death took place, there is no difference between the first death and the death of this child. They all are equal. And all the death people will be together after this life. Those that have died have returned to the time before afterlife, and their death is nothing special. At that time they have died and they have reached gone to particular place. Those who are dying after, then they will go and meet them at that place, and this is how things will go ahead. This is how things will go ahead. So there is no difference between the first death that was carried out after life came into existence on this planet called Earth, and the death of this child. Death of this child, they are same. And the end, the every death, death is a big equalizer, they say, isn't it? After death, people all go and remain at the same place. It is a great leveler, a great equalizer, as we find in the poem of Thomas Gray, the elegy of Thomas Gray, that how death is the equalizer. So that is how the end of the poem is, that ultimately someone had died for the first time in this world. Now death of that person or that creature and the death of this girl, there is no difference. It is one and the same. So instead of expressing your sorrow, mourning the death of that person, it is better to accept the reality. It is better to know the destination, that the destination is we had come from the darkness and we are going back to darkness. And that is what, that is why I won't mourn the death of this child. I will not express sorrow on the death of this child, he says. So the poem is dedicated to that child. That is what we have at the beginning of the poem. Then in the first stanza of the poem, the poet has told us about the origins of life. How has life originated from the humble darkness? Then in the second stanza, he tells us that after death, we go and unite with nature. That is what we have in the second stanza. In the third stanza, he tells us that he will not express sorrow on the death, on any death. Why? Because by doing that, he will be going against the wish of God. That will be a blasphemy. That will be the criticism of the system which has been evolved by God. That is what it tells us in the third stanza. And in the fourth stanza, last stanza, it tells us that there is no difference between the first death and the death of this child. All are equal, and after death, everyone will be equal. That is what we have in this poem, Refusal to Mourn the Death of Death by Fire of a Child in London. Then after the funeral, the last poem perhaps of Dylan Thomas. So after the funeral, people come on in a funeral to see the departed, to see the body of the departed soul. They are there, but how serious they are. That is what he's questioning in this poem. in this poem. The poem, again, as I've written there in the bracket, under the title of the poem, After the Funeral, it is a tribute, an elegy, a personal poem. As we have seen the first poem addressed to his father, personal poem. Again, this one is a personal poem. However, the first poem had has a good element of general life of other part of the society as well. But this poem is exclusively written for his aunt Anne Jones, and he tells us that the people who come to funeral, it is a tribute and elegy to Tom Jones. And in the poem, he expresses contempt for the hypocritical attitude of the people. Hypocritical. They are showing something, but the fact is something. They are not feeling sad because Aunt Anne Jones has died, but they are feeling sad because now they are afraid that even one day they will, because they are afraid that one day even they will die. That is why they are mourning. That is what he says. So people are hypocritical mourners, and everything is so formality, formal salutations of grief. Nothing but good should be said about the dead. This is what we say, that nothing but good should be said about the dead. Once the person is no more in this world, why to criticize when he is unable to defend himself? We should. So what we do, we just talk good about that person. But that is so formal, formal salutations of grief. They are like mule praises and braise. Who braise? Donkey braise. And a mule. Mule praises and braise. As donkey says, as the braying of a donkey. When you are, he's very harsh, isn't it? Too harsh. But anyway, these people are like asses. They are like ass, like donkey. They are superficial, pretending to be sad. But the fact is, they are not, even if they are sad, they are not sad on the death of this lady. They are sad because they are afraid that one day have to die. So their superficiality is there. And that tragic situation is making mockery of the tragic situation. That is, it is an elegy which expresses contempt for the hypocritical mourners. And their expression of grief is nothing but like braying of a donkey, like braying of a donkey. And that is what you should remember. Then we have the lines like muffled toad, in keeping with the atmosphere of the funeral. They are taking every care that no noise should be made. Muffled toes. People are taking just in order to maintain the atmosphere of the funeral. Something which is being created artificially. It is not coming out naturally. It is being created artificially. That muffled muffled toes, muffled toe tap and again tap happily of one peg in the thick. Now tap tap. The word is coming twice. You see, the second line ends with the word tap and the third line starts with the word tap. Now this tap tap, it refers to the sound of nails being put into a coffin. A coffin is being prepared, and that sound of tap tap is being heard, and that is the only sound which is allowed in such situation. That is why people are keeping muffled toe tap. They are muffled toed because they don't want to create noise, because in this kind of situation you don't create any kind of noise. So that is tap tap. Another tap tap tells of a sound. The figure of speech is onomatopoeia. Remember this. Tap tap is a good example of onomatopoeia, is the figure of speech. So that is what we have, that the world is artificial, and the people are superficial in the expression of their grief, in the expression of their sorrow. they exaggerate, they have spittled their eyes, the salt ponds in the sleeves, spittled eyes, they have applied spit to their eyes to show that they have cried. They are, and really they are unable to cry. Their words, whatever the words they are speaking for the dead person, that is nothing short of a braying of a donkey. That is what the first thing he has told us. Second, the atmosphere is being created artificially. People are taking care that the sound should not be created. But one sound is already there, that is tapping, tap, tap. Nails are being fixed into a coffin. That sound is already there. And this sound is an example of onomatopoeia. The poem is contempt on the hypocritical mourners. That is one thing. Second, tap tap, and that is the another thing that we have in the poem. And the poem is a tribute and elegy to Aunt Jones, of who was an aunt of Dylan Thomas. And how people, you see how they are, they have spittled their eyes, they have applied spit, thuk है ना, to their eyes. They have salt ponds in the sleeves, they have made their sleeves wet with water, just to show as if their sleeves are wet with their tears, and they are so much sorrowful on the death of that lady, to show all that. They have wet sleeves that have been deliberately done in the water. Their eyes, they have applied spit to their eyes so that people would think that they have cried a lot. Then that is about the people. That is about the people. The first big stanza that appears there is about the people. But the next small stanza is about a boy. Now, who is this boy? The poet himself, Dylan Thomas himself. And the sound of the spade in the early morning, likely to wake asleep, shakes a boy, overcome with feeling of desperation and desolation. But there is a sound of spade, the everyday activity, everything is normal. The sound of spade is heard by this boy. He gets up, the boy is shaken. He's really hurt to hear about the death of his aunt Anne Jones. And that is why shakes a boy, and overcome with the feeling of desperation and desolation. This boy is really desperate, really sorry to lose his aunt, desolate to lose his aunt, and then he dies an emotional death. Shakes a desolate boy who slits his throat. Now this phrase, slits his throat, that means the emotional death of a boy. All emotions, he is unable to express emotion. Now that is the real expression of sorrow. He is really sorry to lose his aunt, not the other people who are coming out with utterances for the person who is no more in this world, good utterances for a person who is no more in this world, then who are deliberately trying to create no noise. That kind of people who have wet sleeves, who have spitted their eyes, these people are not the real mourners. They are hypocritical mourners. And the real mourner is this boy who is desperate and desolate on the loss of his aunt. The boy who has died emotional death. And as other people shed artificial, superficial tears, this boy is putting dry leaves in her coffin. And now he is making the coffin ready in the dark of the coffin and shades dry leaves. He is putting dry leaves in the coffin in which the body of Anne Jones will be kept. And these dry leaves here are also symbolic of poetry, of poem. He has lost emotion and he has lost the words to write a poem. He's so sorrowful. He's so unhappy on the death of his aunt that his leaves, his words have dried. They have gone dry. His poetic output, elegies, they have lost sparkle, as he has lost his major source of inspiration. Who was the source of inspiration? It was Aunt Anne Jones. She is no more, and this boy is really sad. And this boy is Dylan Thomas. It is he who is really sad, whereas the world is just pretending to be unhappy, is just showing that they are filled with sorrow on the death of that aunt, but the reality is something else. However, this boy who is desolate, who is desperate on the death of his aunt, this boy has lost the major source of inspiration for writing a poem. And that major source was his aunt Anne Jones. Aunt Anne Jones. So after the funeral, a short poem by Dylan Thomas is dedicated to, is a tribute paid to his aunt Anne Jones. That is the last poem by Dylan Thomas. So here I complete the 4 poems of Dylan Thomas. Now the next, I'm moving on to the next writer, the next poet, that is Auden. And the 4 poems prescribed of W.H. Auden, and the first one is petition. Now petition is a request to a person who is superior to you, and a petition is filed in the court that come on, look into the matter, we need your help, come on, help us out. And this is not, whatever is going on is not proper. So similarly, this poem, petition, is about the repression of the sexual desires at the name of religion, at the name of morality. And what, in fact, now you see, that is again an idea which was not very well accepted in that England when W.H. Auden was writing poetry. This is not the theme which was acceptable to the conservative England, or to that matter, Great Britain. Maybe more not to the Ireland, because they are Catholics. They are very particular about principles, about rules. So now in this poem again, in this poem, petition by by Auden, we have that the poem has a psychological message, a kind of psychological message which is regarding the curbing or the repression of the erotic desires, and this is done at the name of morality. This is done at the name of religion. And what does it lead to? It leads to neural and physical diseases. And that is what you should remember. Now that is, it leads to neural and physical diseases. The curbing of, the restriction on the erotic desire causes neural, something neurotic related to our mind, neurology, neural and physical diseases in men and women. When that part of their life remains dissatisfied, and that is how they are controlled by the society, by the community. That is what Auden wants to explain. So it is a petition to the people who are above him, above W.H. Auden. He wants them to look into the matter so that people can have a healthy life. It causes neural and physical disease in men and women. It also makes them cowardly, spiritually exhausted, and sexually frozen. All these restrictions which are applied on these people. It has a negative inversion, be prodigal. That is what we have in the second line of the poem. You see, on the one side I have text, on the other side the explanation is there. So I am not going out through the text because we don't have that much of time. You can go through it after you know the contents, whatever is there in it. So it also makes them cowardly, spiritually exhausted, because that is very important desire which needs to be satisfied. If that remains unsatisfied, people are spiritually exhausted, they are sexually frozen, they become cowardly, they lose confidence. Cowardly here means loss of confidence. That results in loss of confidence. They are unable to concentrate on the spiritual aspect of the life. It is spirituality that tries to take away sex from their life, and ultimately it is taking them away from spirituality as well. They are sexually frozen, unfit. Slowly they become unfit for that act of sex. So that is what we have, and that is the theme of this poem. Their repressive response to sexual love is traced back to their cultural inbreeding. Now, from where does this come? It is that cultural inbreeding. That is what he's saying. Inbreeding. Ironically, inbreeding. Cultural inbreeding. This is what culture teaches us. Teaches us. And we should be restricted with this activity. That shouldn't be carried out freely. That is what is being taught to us. And that for the poet is inbreeding. It is inbreeding. Uh, then in this modern society, we have people who are spiritually and sexually dead. And so we need a new attitude towards sexual love and its role in life. Now, this is the message of this poem Petition. Remember what is the message of this poem? That the need of an hour is to have a new attitude towards sexual love and its role in life. That is what he has tried, W.H. Auden has message, this psychological message W.H. Auden has tried to give through this poem. And finally, ultimately, it's a short poem of around 14 lines, I think. Now 12 lines, maybe of 12 lines. So whatever it is, the poet prays it to plow and sow with seeds. This world, this life, it has to be plowed and sowed with seeds of sexual love, where the graveyard called modern society, whose members are spiritually and sexually dead. So again, the same idea. The idea is that we gradually need to correct the coward's stance. That is what we find. We have to prohibit sharply the rehearsed response, distortions of ingrown virginity. All this I'm reading out from the text of the poem. You see, the lines are there. Distortions of ingrown virginity, and prohibition, prohibit sharply the rehearsed response. What is rehearsed response? Something which is unnatural. Okay, you can come together only because you are husband and wife. Now that is rehearsed response. Rehearsal has taken place. That kind of response. You have to gradually, slowly correct the coward's stance. This is the coward stance that we have taken in this modern world. Something which has taken away the confidence of a person. So we need to amend that. We need to change that. And through this, we need to publish each healer that in city lives. And we need to change the life that we are living in cities. And a new kind of culture should be developed, where person will be more confident, where person will not face any neural or physical disease. And it is what he is trying to suggest, that the way people are restricted from indulging in an act that gives them physical satisfaction at the name of law, at the name of religion, or at the name of moral. The way they are restricted, somewhere this restriction should go away, so that a new kind of love will develop. That is what is the petition of W.H. Auden. That is what he has appealed to the people who are the in charge, who are the people who are deciding the way of life on this in this world. That is what we have in the poem Petition. It is the poem is about, what is the poem Petition about? It is about the enlightenment regarding the role of erotic impulse. Erotic impulse means sexual desire, sexual desire. Uh, so it is about the role of that in the personality of a person, in the personality of a person, how restriction on it can adversely affect the personality of a person. That is what he has told us in this poem petition. So his petition is that there has to be some relaxation in this matter. This is what we have in the first poem of W.H. Auden. Now, the second poem, Passage Moralize. Now, what is the meaning of that Passage Moralize? Passage is a painting in which aspects of landscape are depicted, and the beauty of nature, the beauty of landscape is shown, is depicted, in which aspects of landscape are depicted, and these aspects, they have moral significance. They affect you morally. They affect you morally. Now, what we have done is that we have developed cities, we have developed cultures. This is what we have done. You see, the communist ideas is trying to oppose the law and order which is imposed in England. And that is what we have seen in the first poem as well. But I don't know whether there is some other rule regarding morality at the name of communism and capitalism. After all, morality should remain the same, isn't it? Otherwise, we know the kind of life. AIDS is one of the good example of that. How do people suffer, isn't it? So it's okay to have his own view, to write a poem on that, to file a petition on that for W.H. Auden. But there are certain things which are far away from the realities of life, and we have to accept the reality and to have a good disciplined. It is always better to have a good disciplined life. So that is well. That is the first poem. I went back to that. Coming back to the second one. In this poem, Passage Moralize. Passage is a painting in which aspects of nature moralize, have moral significance, moral importance. Landscapes are shown in the painting, and those landscapes, they affect us morally. Those lands, they affect us morally. And these cities were evolved. These cities were planned. These cities were settled. They were established from what? They were established from, there are many images now you see, at the barren mountains were there around, water, shipwreck, and now starving cities. These are the words which all are in the text. Hearing of harvest, rotting in the valleys. Valleys were there, harvest was there, barren mountains, and all these things. Now these things have given birth to cities. As the culture has developed, human being has developed, we have developed our localities, we have developed our settlements, and with that development, we have carved out cities for ourselves. We have planned cities for ourselves. Townships have come. And in this poem, the dualities of body and mind, duality, two-way, body and mind, nature and culture are crystallized. They are made clear, crystallized in Passage Moralize, with the images of island, shores, seas, in contrast to those of once learned cities, which are now starving and unhappy. So the cities we had planned for ourselves, but now what is the condition of these cities? These cities are they are unhappy, they are starving. We don't have enough food in this cities. There is poverty. People are struggling for employment. They don't have employment. They don't have money. They don't have food because of the economy that we have evolved. So that is what we have in these cities, in these learned cities, into bracket learned, that has been sarcastically said that the cities are learned. But the fact is that by coming from the barren mountains, coming from the islands, from the places near the seas, we have established big cities, learned cities. But what is the outcome of the life in this city? We have life which is full of starvation, and life which is full of unhappiness. That is what we find in these learned cities, and that is what we get in the first half of the poem. The first half of this poem passage, moralize. So now in the other part of the poem, next part of the poem, as we have seen that man, that is human being, this society has been described as as a builder of cities, that impossible islands of its dreams. Now you see what happened when we come to these cities, and when we imagine about the world which is away from the city, and we think of many things that are imaginary. I think that paragraph I have left somewhere. They build by rivers at night. Yeah, no, fine. It's fine. Yeah. These are the three stanzas here. Now the next one. Yeah. When they come in the cities, they imagine certain things. They imagine about a creature rising up from the water. Mermaid is a good example. A beautiful woman who is half body of woman and half a fish. Now that is a marvelous creature of our imagination, but something which is far, far away from reality. And they imagine that there is gold and silver in the mountain. And the many movies have been there where they go in search of gold, and they come across a lot of treasure there in the cave or some place like that, which is in the interior, which is in the forest. That is there. That is what we have created. This is what we imagine, and that this is what we will be getting. This type of things we will be getting when we plan city. But these are the things only in our mind. These are not realities. These are not reality. What is the reality? We have to struggle. We have to work hard. That is the reality. And man, there are many impossible things that he imagines in his dreams. He understands that, okay, this is only my dream. I won't be able to fulfill it. These are the dreams which are only the worlds of his mind, and which rejects the realities of the bodies. And the body is reality. Body is reality. But the thought process that goes on in the mind, which is far from reality. And these are the certain things that he never achieves. And what he achieves, he achieves hunger, he achieves struggle, and that is what we get in the cities. And so many doubtful perished in the mountains. Many such imaginations, we have lost them in the mountains. We have climbing up crags to get a view of islands. We have tried to work harder. We have tried to achieve something To get a view of island means ambition, certain ambition. To try to achieve those ambition, we have tried to achieve something, to work harder, to do something extra in this life, in the life of city. But fearful took with them their sorrow. But what was the outcome? The sorrow was the outcome, which stayed them when they reached unhappy cities. And that sorrow remains with us. And the cities are unhappy. How are our cities? They are unhappy. And in the last part of the poem, we have an image of a snowbound landscape. We have an image of a snowbound landscape, which it hopes, which the poet hopes will melt. And now the landscape is covered with snow, white. Now winter is a season of death, no activity, harshness everywhere, everyone in grief, all in sorrow. It's a season of death, and the white cover of snow is considered to be a shroud, kafan. That is what it is to be considered to be. But in the end, now this kind of cities we have evolved, we have planned for ourselves. But in the end, the poem ends on the note of optimism, and the final image of the poem is of a snowbound landscape, the landscape which is covered with snow, as if a dead body is covered with shroud, and which it hopes will melt, but that will slowly melt, it go away, gushing, making sound, and flushing green. And what will come out? Flushing green, greenery will come out from these sorrowful valleys, making possible rebuilding of our cities. So we will have to rebuild it. What we have built for ourselves so far is an unsuccessful act. This act can never bring satisfaction. It can never bring happiness. We will have to rebuild it. And that hope is there, that slowly this white cover of snow will melt away, and the flushing green will come out, and all the sorrows will go away. But for that, we will have to rebuild our cities, making possible rebuilding our cities. So the end of the poem is important. The poem in the final stage, what is the end? We have a snowbound landscape, which will slowly melt. It will go away, and the outcome will be something which is lush green, flush green. Image of, and that flush green is an image of rebuilding of cities. That is what we have. And the poem deals with body and mind. Body is reality, mind is imagination, something that never be fulfilled. Nature and culture, valleys, mountains, seashores, all these are valleys. They are nature. Culture, culture means the life of city that we have. We have evolved culture for ourselves away from nature. And that is what is, sorry, some disturbance is there. So that is the first thing you have to remember, the theme of the poem. The theme of the poem is he has compared the body and mind. He has compared nature and culture. These are the things that have been compared in the poem. And the second is that the poem ends on the note of optimism, with poet hoping that the snow will slowly go away and greenery will come out. That is the hope, and he hopes the rebuilding of these cities. This is what we have in the poem. And what is the meaning of this poem? It is painting in which aspects of landscape have moral significance. It's a long poem, but well, somehow I've just covered the topics, the part of the poem which is important from your examination point of view, something that could be converted, that can be converted into MCQ form. The things that can't be converted, I haven't touched them. Now, the next poem is an unknown citizen. Now, an unknown citizen, that means unknown. The people who are the ruling class, the people who are ruling this world, I think it is 5:30. I'll take another 15 minutes, 2 poems remaining. I'll finish off the poems in 15 minutes, the 2 poems. Now, the unknown citizen, as you all know, unknown. Someone, people are still coming, who is not known. Now, this title, the unknown citizen, has been taken from it's a parody of the unknown soldier. Unknown soldier, a term used to acknowledge folks whose bodies are discovered after a battle, which can't be recognized. When a soldier dies in the battlefield, sometimes for many a days, his companions are unable to retrieve his body, are unable to take back the body. And by the time they could do it, it is in such a state of decompose. It is so much decomposed that they are unable to recognize the dead body. So for that act, this term, the unknown soldier, was used. For the term, the unknown soldier was used, and W.H. Auden has taken the title the unknown citizen from that is from the unknown soldier. So it is a parody. The title of the poem is a parody of the unknown soldier, the act where the body is recovered, the body of a soldier is recovered, but it is in a state that it cannot be recognized that it was the same person. You can't recognize that body. So that state is the unknown soldier, that is known as the unknown soldier, from where the title of the poem, the unknown citizen, has been taken. Now, in the modern society, a common individual, now again communism coming out, a common individual, ordinary person, has to live a life of anonymity. No one knows him, anonymous, unknown, gumnam, and that kind of life of anonymity, conformity. Conform, you have to do this, you have to do this, you can't go beyond that. You have to pay the light bill, you have to pay the water bill, you have to pay the taxes for your house. That conformity and government control. You have to pay this much for petrol. That is the control of government. So this kind of life a common man has to live in this modern society. In this modern society. This unknown citizen of Auden is of conformity of a society where everyone must follow rule. There are certain rules. If you earn so much of money, you have to pay this much of tax, isn't it? By this time, if it is lockdown, by 4 o'clock, you have to return to your house. So these are the rules that you have to follow. And this citizen, he was following every rule. He was doing all the things rightly. Whatever was, he was not breaking any rule. He was following all the rules of the land, whatever were there. And he's an unknown citizen. When he died, no one knew him that who has died. There is certain number that was given to him, and that is all. That is his identity. The government, the administration, they doesn't recognize him. They doesn't know him. Whereas he was a good citizen. He had paid all the taxes. He has followed all the rules. When he was called for duty, he had participated in a war for his nation. He has served he had served his community. He worked in a factory. He never got fired. That means he was a good worker. He participated in the war. I've already told you this. Then he always paid his dues, whatever his dues were. He would be paying his dues honestly. He was popular with his mates, with his friend. He liked the drink, a common man. So everyone with all this kind of character, he was a good man. That is what people are convinced. But the poem is a satirical poem. Now this is what you have to remember. The poem In this poem, Auden speaks of what? He speaks of the dangers of modern society to the individual. That is what the first thing you have to remember. He is speaking about the dangers of the modern society to the individual. That is what he is speaking in this poem about. One thing. Second, the citizen of Auden was a person who followed all rules, who obeyed all rule. He followed every rule of the land. He did not break any rule of the land. But what was the outcome? He remained anonymous. Nobody knew him. He led his life completely under the control of government. He did not have free life. That kind of person he was. Uh, the central message is that the government can look at man's life, and from their eyes, it can be a fulfilling one. But in reality, a man's life is so much more than that. In spite of doing all this, in spite of following all the rules, in spite of following the law, what kind of life that person lived? Was that life enough to make him famous? No. Something more is required. So God, a man's life is so much more than that. It is something more than that. And so the concept of the unknown citizen, the title of the poem, the unknown citizen. He was a common man. He was married. He had 5 children. And having 5 children in those days was in proportion to the requirement of the nation. And that is what he tells us in the poem. If you go through the poem, that is what you will find, that he has suggests that the lives of many, the concept of unknown citizens suggests that lives of normal people is so conventional, so traditional, paramparic, and uneventful that they might as well be unknown or anonymous, that they don't have their identity, they don't have their own existence. Whatever their identity is, whatever their existence is, it is controlled by the government, it is controlled by the law. That is what is the concept of the unknown citizen is. And the title of the unknown citizen, I have already told you. So the things that you have to remember from the poem, The Unknown Citizen, is about its title. The title is a parody of the title, The Unknown Soldier. From there, W.H. Auden has taken this title, The Unknown Citizen. Then in this poem, Auden tells us about the dangers of modern society, that how the control over individual by law in the modern society makes that individual anonymous, makes that individual loses identity. पहचान उसकी खो जाती है. That is what it tells us. The poem is a satire. The poem is a satire on the modern administrative system. उसके ऊपर satire है ये. And the fourth is suggest, the poem tells us that the lives of many normal people, the common people, the ordinary people, is so conventional and uneventful that they remain unknown throughout their life. Even after their death, people hardly know them. So this is what is about the unknown citizen. Unknown, as we who's, in spite of following, being an honest man, following all the rules, in spite of fighting a war for his country, he remains an unknown citizen, remains the unknown citizen. And now the last poem, I think another 10 minutes will be enough for me. It's 5:40. Is again about the funeral, and the main theme of this poem. Then remember the important theme of funeral blues. This poem, whether I have had it somewhere or not, I don't know. But you please remember that this poem is about grief, silence, isolation, and death. That is what that is the main theme of the poem. It is about grief, sorrow, silence, grief oblique silence. In grief, you keep silent, isn't it? You don't. So grief, silence, isolation, loneliness, and death. These are the main things of this poem. And right at the beginning of the poem, the poet asks to stop all the clocks. Stop all the clocks. Cut off the telephone. No sound. Silence everywhere. Stop the dog from barking. With a juice, give him some bone so that dog won't bark. He will be busy with the juicy bone. And do this. So, silence the pianos. Even pianos shouldn't be played now. With muffled drum. The drum which are played during the funeral. Let them be there instead of pianos. And bring out the coffin. Let the mourners come. Bring out the coffin. Let the mourners come. So, I think I haven't given the title to this poem. Remember, from here, I'm starting with a poem, Funeral Blues, by W.H. Auden. And the poem the poet starts by, he wants to create silence because someone is dead. And under this situation, under such circumstance, you have to maintain silence. So even the clocks should stop. Now it has two meaning, the stopping of clock. One, it is about the sound should not be created. The sound which is created by the clock, that should not be there. And second, it is stopping of the time. And the time has stopped for that man. It is over, one who is dead. So the idea of stopping the clocks, it stops the noise, and then it also signifies the stopping of time. Remember this. How does the poem starts? It starts with stop all the clocks. What is the theme of the poem? The theme is silence, isolation, and death. That is what the poem talks about, and starts with the stopping of the clocks. The stopping of the clocks has two meaning. First, sound should not be created. Second, the time has stopped for the person who is dead. Along with that, the other sounds should also be prevented. Dogs should be prevented from barking, and the pianos should not be played instead of muffled drum. And the drums which express the sound of sorrow, which express the sound of sadness, those drums should be played. Now everything is set for the funeral. Now bring out the coffin, and now the mourners will come. The people who would be participating in this procession, in this funeral, they will come. That is what we have in the first part of the poem. That poet is trying to create silence everywhere. But the important thing you have to remember in this poem is that the stopping of clock is not only about the sound, it is also about the stopping of time. It is also about the stopping of time when somebody dies. That is what you should remember. Then let airplanes circle mooning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message he is dead. So even airplanes have a different role to play now. What is the role that they should play when they will be flying in the sky? The sound will be created, no doubt, when the plane will be flying. But that sound will be depicting, will be showing mourning, some sorrow, sadness, mourning overhead. They will be moving over and mourning, expressing sorrow, and let them write in the sky. What will they write in the sky? That he is dead. He is dead. So funeral blues. That is how we have, after the funeral, one poem. We have funeral blues. So scribbling, scribbling, what is scribble? To scribble, to rough writing, writing roughly on the sky, the message that the person is dead. This is the beginning of this short poem. Then after the barking of the dog, aeroplane, piano, and all that. Now we have another image in the poem. There is an image of dove. Dove is a kind of bird. And dove is a symbol of purity, sacredness, purity, and peace. Of purity and peace. But But here, when he's talking about dove, he's not talking dove. He's saying public doves. And he uses the word public doves. Now, what does he mean by public doves? When he's talking about public doves, he's talking about a common man. Public means common people. So he uses public doves, referencing the common pigeon, suggesting that it is about referring to a common pigeon, to a common man, that he wants a commonplace animal to dress formally and pay its respect to signify the loss of this person is a loss to everybody. So majority of the people in all the society, in all the countries, in all the nation, in all the states, in all the communities, majority of the people, they are common people. They are common people. So if a public dove, if a common dove is expressing the sorry, is expressing the sorrow of the death of this person, what will happen? That loss will be expressed on behalf of everybody. That will be loss of this person will be a loss to everybody. So that is why this is this is important here, is that he has said public dove means common dove. A common dove should express the sorrow. That means everyone should express the sorrow for the death of this person. And why only common man? Even the people who are carrying on with government duties, with government responsibilities, the people like traffic policemen, they should wear black cotton gloves. They should wear black cotton gloves as a sign of respect to the departed soul, to the person who is no more alive in this world. A public dove, that is a common man, should pay respect to him. A common dove should pay respect to him, because if a public dove pays respect to this man, the respect will be paid by the majority of the people. But along with dove, even the people who are not common, who are involved in an activity which is carried out under the instructions of government, like a traffic policeman controlling a traffic, even that man should be a part of it. And to express his sorrow, to express his grief, that person should wear a black cotton gloves. A black cotton glove should be worn by the policeman, the traffic policeman, to show his feelings for the person who has departed. Wearing black gloves would be a sign of respect to the departed. This is the second part of the poem. And in the last part of the poem, he was my north, my south, my east, and west. Famous lines. Now these lines, they suggest a loss of direction. These lines, that the person who is no more in this world, he was my north, he was my south, my east, and my west. So I'm confused. He was my north, he was my south, my east, my west. I am confused, and it suggests the loss of direction. Now, what should I do in my life? I am unable to decide upon. I love this person dearly, and with his passing away, I don't know what to do now in my remaining life. So this emotion of losing him, this feeling of losing him will last with me forever, he says. My working week and my Sunday rest. He was everything for me. Whether I am working on the 5 days or on the 6 days of a week, he was there to guide me, to suggest me, to inspire me. And even if it was the rest of Sunday, he was there with me. He was my noon, afternoon, midnight, my talk, my song. And I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. I thought that this love, my respect, this love for that person will remain here forever. But I was wrong. Why? Because now that love has been replaced by grief. The love that I had for that person has been replaced by sorrow. Sorrow is stronger than the love that I had. I thought that this love is everlasting, never ending, but I was wrong. And now it has been replaced by grief. And that is what is the poem which is written in general about funeral, about a funeral of a person. So whatever the paraphrases that are there in the in these slides, that is what are important for you. No doubt, you will have to go through the poem once. That should be enough. And I have covered all the 8 poems, and whatever topics are relevant, whatever aspects are important, points are important from this MCQ pattern point of view, whatever, I have tried to cover everything in this almost 2 hours, I suppose. Almost 2 hours. It's 5:53. So along with the background topics, go through it once, the background topics as well. You can safely prepare for your examination, taking help of these slides. Of course, there is no replacement to the text. Text remains text, but whatever text I could get hold of, they are a part of this presentation. I will get them here as well. So reading the text is most important. The paraphrase will give you an idea about the suggestions, intentions, and whatever the poet wants to convey. And that is what will help you to solve your MCQs in a better way. I hope so. So that is all from my side. And back to both the anchors, Madam Mohril and Dr. Panikar.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very informative and resourceful lecture. Thank you very much. In your lecture, you covered all the topics prescribed in the background section and almost all the poems prescribed in the for the detailed study. Thank you so much for your very informative and resourceful lecture. On behalf of the students and the organizing committee, I express humble thankfulness to you, sir. Thank you so much. And this instruction is for the students that it was the last lecture according to our timetable, but according to the timetable 2 or 3 lectures are not engaged. So in the coming days, 2 to 3 days, we will try our level best to conduct the sessions, and we will post the links to you. And all the best to all of you for the preparation of university examination. Thank you so much for your very wonderful participation and your enthusiastic support to this particular lecture series. Thank you so much. On behalf of all the organizing team, I express humble thankfulness to you also. Thank you so much.